Good morning, RL. Good morning, everybody. It does feel like spring a little bit today. I don't know if that's wishful thinking, but I'm hoping. So, this week I was thinking about a breakup story a client of mine told me many years ago. And even at that point, I thought I had heard them all. And this was before I was a minister. And so this woman told me that she assisted her sister in leaving a relationship, and she had been living with a particular man for a few years. And here's the little kicker in it that makes it different. So the man that her sister was living with had a phobia that I have never heard of, that he couldn't go out of like a 5-mile radius of where he lived. So his whole life had to be within that 5 miles, his work and all that. And as long as he was within that, he could function like, I suppose, anyone else of us. That put us in a quote-unquote normal range. But there was almost like this barrier once you got to about 5 miles. So this client of mine told me that this is how she assisted her sister, who wanted, in a sense, make kind of a clean escape out of this. She didn't tell her boyfriend that she was going to move. That my client, one morning on an appointed day, was around the corner in a rented moving van. And I told you wouldn't have heard this one before. And so once the coast was clear, that her boyfriend had gone to work and enough time had passed that he didn't have to run home to get keys or forgot a book or a file, my client drove the moving van. They loaded up everything that was hers and then moved her to a new location that was 20 miles away, knowing that her boyfriend would never seek to follow her. Now, admit it to me. Doesn't this sound a little like compelling? No, haven't we all wanted to make, in a sense, what we thought was a clean escape? That we didn't want to have to deal with any of the issues that were in a relationship or job or anything else, that there's this fantasy that I could just leave. I could just get in a car and go. I could load up the moving van. I could go to the airport and get on the first plane out of town or something. I mean, there's something really appealing about that on a certain level. But I think we all know that something like that probably most of the time would not turn out well. I have no idea if there were consequences from this woman just loading up the moving van and moving. Who knows, maybe your ex-boyfriend had therapy and found her later on in life. I don't know. But what I want to talk about today is endings, and how our endings determine the quality of our beginnings. In a sense, I had remembered a little phrase that I titled my blog this week from a teacher years ago that said, "We begin with the end." In other words, you don't begin out of nothingness, that your endings are really the launching pad that you go to the next thing. And depending on the quality of your endings, in fact, your next big thing may not be a next big thing at all. If you haven't dealt with the ending in integrity, the next chapter is just the furniture moved around in the old thing, showing up as something new. And this is, the oldest joke I've used for the last many years is that sometimes we date the same person 5 times in different bodies. It's like until you figure it out, it's like, oh, we met before. I thought we broke up last year. Yes, new hair color, you're 5 inches taller or shorter, but here you are again. And at some point, hopefully, we get what we're doing and we deal with the ending better, to know that until we do, we're not moving forward. We're not really going anywhere. So let's talk about the endings and that we do, and really, I guess some of the pitfalls and our human resistance to them. And I think part of it is the endings can be so, messy, complicated. We hate to be the one to have that conversation. But this is even true in I guess, let's say, good endings, in a sense, or happier endings, sort of things. And so there's the first kind of really happy or good endings that we seek out are rites of passage, like a graduation. That you may work for years for either high school or college, or learning to do a new type of job that you go into an actual school to learn, or anything else that's a rite of passage that you aspire to something elevated in your life. And they're good. And in fact, I think the amazing thing about graduation, especially physical graduations, I'm sure all of us has been to at least one, even if it was even if it was high school. And so what do we do at graduations? We put on an outfit we would never think of wearing any time other in our life. I mean, have you really thought about this cap and gown thing? I mean, you wouldn't throw it on to go to 7-Eleven, would you? I mean, I wouldn't. I mean, just think about it. And we think nothing at all to put this contraption on, and this is the thing that we do. But here's the important thing about a graduation ceremony. Of course, you walk up an aisle, get a diploma or certificate or something, and as you walk away, you are symbolically walking away from the past. So if you did go to a graduation ceremony, high school, college, or whatever, as you were going down the aisle, you didn't think, gee, I'll go hang out at class tomorrow. I mean, it was really clear that you were moving on to something else. In fact, there'd be something kind of weird and creepy about going and hanging out at the class you just finished and took the final for. I mean, you really get. And of course, there's at the same time, great discomfort in that, even though with the excitement, because I remember when I graduated from college, I could no longer put off decisions that I needed to make. There was something very comforting and cocoon-like about a school experience. Oh, I don't have to worry about that until I graduate. But I just remember as I'm walking down the aisle in my silly outfit, like, oh, I have to make those decisions now. And for me, at least at that time, there wasn't a clear path of what I was going to do. So I was suddenly thrown into that indecision of like, oh my God, why did I spend all this time and money? Now what am I going to do? So part of endings, how are we going to handle that? How are we going to deal with uncertainty? How are we not going to fall back into trying to escape it? I remember meeting someone just a few years ago that was in that graduating from college sort of thing, not knowing what to do. And they decided, I know what to do. I'll get another degree. Meaning that, so they weren't successful yet. I don't know what they ultimately did because it wasn't someone I knew well. But they were having trouble with making a successful transition and truly doing an ending. And she at that time was considering, I'll just go back. I'll get another degree, spend another $30,000 or whatever it is these days for a thing. So there's a little bit of peril in even our rites of passage if we don't successfully make those rites of passage. And then, of course, there are planned things, like you plan a new career, you plan to move to another city. And you're led to by, the excitement of something new and fun even coming into your life. But again, just like graduations, there's that moment where you realize that you're shutting the door on something. So this month, mid-month, will be my 19th anniversary of coming to the Wood River Valley from Oklahoma City. And there was that odd moment when everything, this is kind of the topic today of this week is moving vans, so that, being in the moving van, and I think it was like a 20-foot thing, everything in the van, just left the keys at the front door for the owner of the house we were renting, and feeling like, the Clampetts, leaving, with even Granny up on top of the bus there. And so everything you owned here, cat and dog in the cab, and like, turning on the moving van and very excited to come here, but at the same time like, oh my God, what are we doing here? And even that feeling of, maybe I could just like cancel this. This just seems like too out there all of a sudden that I'm with cat, dog, and everything we own here and embarking, on a 4-day trip. There is that great uncertainty of, did I make the right decision? And certainly, as not only from my experience, but if I talked to people over the years that have made positive decisions like that, there was always this idea of, it's too scary, it's too big of a change, I need to, a do-over. Let me just kind of go back to what I was so certain that I needed to leave a little bit. And so, again, an unsuccessful ending of sorts, where even though we felt guided to something big and wonderful, that is like, oh no, this is too big and too wonderful for me. So again, how do we make peace with that ending? Then, of course, there are the endings that seem to come out of nowhere. Like the guy that got left by the girlfriend in the moving van. Can you imagine coming home and like, there used to be a couch here. You know what I mean? Or what happened to the piano, or something like that, where seemingly out of nowhere, and obviously I'm not going to judge these people in relationships. It takes two to, do whatever, create whatever happened there. But where it suddenly just hits you in the face, where you possibly lose your good job, get laid off, or you get an unexpected diagnosis, or gosh, you've been living at a place for quite a while, and the owner says, guess what, I sold it. You get to look for an apartment in an area where there's no vacancies, like right now. So, and that creates it's more difficulties of how do I come to terms with an ending of sorts when I didn't even want to bring one on. So here we are. And I think right now why this idea is so compelling to me is that I think we're in one of the biggest eras of endings that I have ever faced in my life, or as a group. I mean, really think about it. The endings that we've had to face, that we are still being faced. And, this is just about a year anniversary that this whole COVID thing, is that to say, just suddenly, to us at least, came out of nowhere. And I remember just about a year ago today, I took my last plane trip coming out of Denver, Colorado. There was a Centers of Spiritual Living convention there. And I remember kind of the gossip at the airport is, gee, there's something going on in China. And of course it wouldn't affect here. And I'm sure that, gee, if it does, it'll just be a couple weeks kind of thing. And as you all know, suddenly, seemingly overnight, we were faced with a series of endings that to us seemed to come out of nowhere, and having no idea what those endings meant, and having no idea to what the new beginnings would be. And I would say that in some ways this last year is, not that it's been a limbo, but kind of an uncertainty of, will there be a new beginnings kind of thing. But here we are again, as life is changing yet again. It seems like our journey on this is, let's hope and knock on everything, that is loosening up. What's interesting, we have 5 people that do our Sunday crew here, and just realizing all of us have been vaccinated. I mean, that's like kind of miraculous compared to a year ago when we were in that uncertainty. But this leads to an even other uncertainty. So this period will have an end. And as much as we say, and we know we want it to end, and I'm all on board for it to be an end, but there's going to be a new beginning, not a going back to where we were. So I guess you could say that there's even a comfort of just locking your door and not going to see anyone. I don't have to make choices anymore. I don't have to make an excuse not to meet so-and-so out for dinner or for coffee, because we don't do that anymore. But what happens when that excuse is no longer valid? What happens when you are going into public spaces again in ways that we have not been able to before? What happens that, God, everything like the workforce and all that has so drastically changed that I don't think any of us have any idea of what the new beginnings are going to be over the next several months and even years. It's all, in a sense, uncharted territory. So part of, even though we long for an ending of sorts right now, I know I do, but to know that you just can't drive away from it in a moving van, that we have to see what's, in a sense, on our plate. What are we each individually emotionally dealing with? What are we as families and communities? And again, what is this transition to yet a different way of being going to be like? That's not an easy thing to answer. I was reading a little bit more of my book of the month right now, The Surrender Experiment by Michael Singer. And of course, this book is, I'm purposely just reading little bits at a time, writing about a time of major change in his life, when in his early 20s, at least the portion of the book I'm reading. And he writes this about release and change. He says, I could see that the practice of surrender was done in two very distinct steps. First, you let go of the personal reactions of like or dislike that form in your mind and heart. And second, with the resilient sense of clarity, you simply look to see what is being asked of you by the situation unfolding in front of you. This is a lot to process. So first of all, I know, and I'm saying, this is a job for anyone else but me. You know what I mean? So first he says, to get beyond the judgment of something is either good or bad, or I like it or dislike it. Now, this isn't to say that we shouldn't have opinions, and it's not to say that there aren't some things that are inherently negative or bad. But in this time of recreation, what is negative and what is positive? And we may not be able to answer that question for maybe many years to come. And really in this time of uncertainty of creation, that most of us I think we're comfortable with what I call the divine masculine form of creation. Like I balance the divine masculine to divine feminine, and this doesn't mean there's boy gods and girls gods. It just means, it's like the yin-yang picture we've all seen in different forms, that these two fit perfectly together, and in situations in our life, one aspect, either the divine masculine or the divine feminine, is more the dominant, but they're both always there. But we really love the divine masculine that says, begin with the end in mind. I have a distinct idea of what my life in the future should look like, and there's a very easy 10-point plan of steps to get there. Isn't that comforting? And if you're like, gee, I don't know where I am today. Oh, let me look at the plan. Oh, I'm at step 3 today. I feel so good now. I was afraid maybe I had skipped a step. In fact, I was really wanting to go to step 5, but my paper tells me I'm on step 3. Now think of it. That's very comforting, isn't it? To know what step I'm in. Just like, again, back if in high school or college. Oh, I have 10 classes to complete before I graduate. It's such an easy, bite-sized plan, and that has an easy path to follow. But the other aspect of the divine feminine is that rather than, in a sense, trying to make it happen, that you have to take a step back and allow things to happen. And that can go very much against what we feel as human beings, especially as Westerners. I think not one of our best gifts is allowing things to happen, allowing process to take its course. As Americans, we want to make things happen. Let's make some phone calls. Let's get people in the neighborhood together. Let's do something. So it's a big challenge for us as Westerners to go into divine feminine mode. And like he says here, you simply look to see what is being asked of you by the situation unfolding in front of you. So this doesn't mean that you don't have an opinion of what's supposed to happen, but you realize that the change that is up for right now is so big that you can't even begin to go to the divine masculine of, oh, here's where it should be. And so look at your life now and look at the world right now. I have no clue of what this is supposed to look like. I have no clue what I want it to look like. I know of overarching spiritual principles that I want to see more in our country. I want to see unconditional love. I want to see unconditional non-judgmentalness. I want to see respect between all people. I want to see that regardless of what laws we pass, that at the core is this idea of the freedom and justice for all type of thing. So those are the overall arching things, but how it's supposed to look like, the exact verbiage, I don't know. And I don't think any of you know either. So part of this is just starting to trust, to get up in each and every day and say, okay, Spirit, I'm on board. I'm on board for these larger spiritual principles I want to see, and I'm on board to be shown what my step and part in this is today. And boy, that's the kind of thing that's maddening, though, isn't it? Because it's not on my 10-point plan. Just to say I'm open to be used by Spirit today is so, I don't know, kind of woo-woo and weird sometimes. It's like, oh, I'm just here for Spirit today. But on a certain level, that's what it gets down to. It's those divine feminine moments that can lead you, at least for a little time, to the divine masculine and say, okay, this is what I need to do. And yes, it's maddening to just be open. And again, I've shared this probably a lot over the last several months, is that my prayer is to be open to guidance, and second, to have the courage to follow through with what I'm being guided to do. That's it. If I can have those two things, open to guidance, to listen to that voice within, that voice of Spirit, and to have the courage for the follow-through. That's what I'm holding on to right now. That's kind of it. And I think that if we would all go in that direction, and again, not this kind of woo-woo floating around and what happens, but to know that no. And in that guidance, they're just going to say, okay, no, actually you do have to do this thing today. You have to step out of your house, and you have to do this thing, whatever it be. So it's not really passive. It is kind of releasing attachment to how you may have done something before. And part of this really is this mishmash of endings and beginnings that we're in right now, because it's not like Monday is endings and Tuesdays are beginnings. And Wednesday is a free day. No, it doesn't really work that way. They all happen at the same time, and we're having to deal with different layers of endings and things, and these new things that are coming in as we're being inspired by our connection to Spirit. And to get back to stop judging this mishmash or stew that's going on right now. And just want to close with this. I found this on the Deepak Chopra site, and I love this. And he said, anything that annoys you is teaching you patience. Anyone who abandons you is teaching you how to stand up on your own feet. Anything that angers you is teaching you forgiveness and compassion. Anything that has power over you is teaching you how to take your power back. Anything you hate is teaching you unconditional love. Anything you fear is teaching you courage to overcome your fear. Anything you can't control is teaching you how to let go. I think this was written especially for this little time in history. And there's amazing things that are possible right now if we allow ourselves to open up to them, if we allow ourselves to have clean endings as we move forward. So let's just take this within and pray for a moment. And so I recognize for us all here the power and presence of the divine masculine, the divine feminine, this power of creation that we are one with, that emanates from each of us at a cellular level, knowing that this energy, this presence, makes all things possible as we work with it. And I speak my word today for us all, that we open up, release, and let go of our attachment to how things have been. That we, in a sense, let go, I guess, in a clean way. We make peace with what was. And as we make peace with what was, we welcome with what needs to be right now. And we welcome what needs to be next week and next year. And we allow ourselves to be positive participants in this transition. That we move beyond liking and dislike, and we do see the power and presence of Spirit right where we are, right within everything, and allow that to be our guide. So I give thanks for this understanding, I give thanks for this realization, and as I give thanks for it, I release it. I release my attachment to what has just been said, knowing that as I release it, amazing things happen. And so it is.